In 1982, on the verge of releasing his breakthrough album 1999, Prince faced a challenge. The complex, conventional music industry structure was fundamentally incompatible with his singular, chaotic vision. Now, this wasn't just a minor roadblock. It was a full-blown philosophical crisis. You had this one-man creative tornado colliding with an industry built by committee. And his solution? Well, it didn't just define his legendary career. It created a powerful blueprint for anyone seeking creative and commercial freedom. This was his life's work. So let's dive in and see how he pulled it off. So this right here, this is the moment. He's on the cusp of becoming a global superstar. But he has this terrifying realization. The very system that's supposed to make him famous is also designed to water him down, to compromise his vision, to sand off all the brilliant, weird edges of his ideas. So he had a choice. He could play the game by their rules, or he could invent a whole new one. And for him, the decision was a no-brainer. This was never just about making music. It was about building a fortress around his creativity. A fortress where he was the only one with the keys.
And this really lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the standard industry model. It's all about delegation. You get a specialist for everything. A session drummer, a hotshot guitarist, a producer, an engineer. It's a team sport, which always leads to compromise. But then on the other side, you have the Prince vision. It's a system built on total, absolute control. One person, a true polymath, does it all. That's how you guarantee the pure, undiluted idea makes it from his brain to the final record. You see, he didn't want to manage the team, he wanted to be the team.
So you gotta ask, right? What makes someone make such a radical choice? Why reject the exact system that's made countless others rich and famous? Well, to really get the Prince principle, we've got to rewind the clock. We have to look at what forged this obsession with control way before he ever set foot in a major studio.
Yeah, this whole philosophy, it didn't just pop into his head one day. It was hammered into shape by his early life. He was a legit self-taught prodigy, mastering dozens of instruments completely by ear. But get this, it wasn't just about talent, it was about survival. He came from a pretty unstable family background, so being self-sufficient wasn't a cool lifestyle choice. It was the only option he had. This mindset wasn't born in a boardroom. It was a survival tactic. Every new instrument he learned was another brick in the wall he was building around himself.
And that lesson got hammered home the second he actually got into the music business. He saw firsthand that the industry was basically a machine designed to exploit artists, to own their creativity and control their destiny. Relying on other people, producers, engineers, even other musicians, meant giving up a piece of his vision, and it meant giving up a piece of the profits. He figured out really fast that every single person you depend on is a place where your vision can get watered down and your money can disappear. And so he came to one simple conclusion: dependence is the enemy of freedom. So all this trial by fire of self-reliance, it didn't just create an amazing musician. It created a systems thinker. He didn't just react to the industry's problems, he went on offense. He designed an entire philosophy to beat the system, a system for total control. He called it the Prince Principle, and it's built on 3 incredibly powerful pillars. Okay, pillar number 1, the vertical integration of skills. Now, that sounds like something you'd hear in a business class, and it kind of is. Think about a company that controls its entire supply chain, from the raw materials to the final product. Prince did that, but for art. He was the entire supply chain, writing the lyrics, composing the music, playing the drums, the bass, the guitar, the keyboards, and then engineering and mixing the whole thing. The key here is that this wasn't an ego trip. It was quality control. It was the only way to guarantee the final product was 100% pure Prince. And that leads right into pillar number 2, the Anti-Delegation Mandate. This takes it a step further. It wasn't just that he could do everything himself. He had this core conviction that he could do it all faster and better than anyone he could possibly hire. I mean, think about the efficiency of it. Why waste hours trying to explain the funky drum pattern in your head to a session player when you can just sit down and nail it yourself in 5 minutes? To Prince, delegation wasn't help. It was a bottleneck. It slowed him down. So his rule was simple. If it's important, you do it yourself. And pillar 3, this is where it all comes together. This is the end game. Self-determination as freedom. This is where creative control finally turns into real commercial power. Look, it's one thing to master all the skills to create the work, but it's another thing entirely to own that work. His legendary, public, and often painful fight to own his master recordings wasn't just about getting a bigger check. It was about freedom. Full stop. He knew that real autonomy only comes when you own the fruits of your labor.
Okay, so having a philosophy is great, right? But ideas are pretty useless if you don't actually put them into practice, day in and day out. Prince's genius wasn't just in the big idea, it was in the disciplined, repeatable systems he built to make it happen. So let's take a look at the engine room. How did he actually do it? His main weapon was a process called time-locked studio immersion. It was intense. Step 1, marathon sessions. I'm talking locking himself in the studio for 18, sometimes 24 hours straight. Step 2, systematic instrument rotation. He would literally just move from the drums to the bass to the keys to the guitar, building the song layer by layer, all by himself to make sure it had one cohesive feel. And step 3, a total defense against distractions. The studio was a fortress, no phone calls, no interruptions. This wasn't just working hard, it was a military-grade defense of his creative zone. And this crazy obsessive system, well, it led to an almost unbelievable amount of music, which brings us to his other core habit, a habit all summed up by this one number, 8,000 plus. Just let that sink in for a second. Over 8,000 unreleased songs, all locked away in his legendary vault. That is more music than most artists release in 10 lifetimes.
But here's the thing. The vault wasn't just a messy closet of B-sides. It was a strategic weapon. It was what you'd call an anti-fragile creative buffer. In simple terms, it made him bulletproof. It meant he was never desperate. Imagine walking into a tense negotiation with a record label. They think they have you backed into a corner, needing a hit on their schedule. But you've got 10 brilliant albums already finished and in your back pocket. Who has the power in that room? You do. He was never at their mercy.
So, what's the big picture here? What was the result of this radical philosophy and these insane systems? It's simple. He didn't just become a star. He fundamentally rewrote the rules of the music business. The Prince principle left a legacy of control that has empowered generations of artists.
I think his biggest legacy might be the new kind of artist he created. He basically invented the modern, self-contained artist, that one-person band who writes, performs, produces, and engineers everything from a home studio. He proved you didn't need the gigantic, expensive machinery of the old-school industry to make timeless art. In a way, he democratized genius. He showed an entire generation that you could build an empire from your bedroom, as long as that bedroom contained a universe of skill.
And of course, you absolutely cannot talk about his legacy of control without talking about his most public, most iconic battle. In the 90s, when he was in a dispute with his label, Warner Bros., he famously wrote the word slave on his face. This wasn't some cheap PR stunt. This was him taking his core principle, his entire philosophy, and putting it on blast for the whole world to see. He was making it painfully clear that if you don't own your work, you aren't truly free.
And man, this was not an overnight fight. It was a long, brutal, systematic struggle. From those early contracts where he signed away control, through that very public slave protest, all the way to his eventual triumphant victory, where he finally regained control of his own work. And by doing that, he basically drew a roadmap for every artist who came after him, showing them this is how you fight for your art. This is why you have to own it.
Okay, so what's the takeaway for us? Because this story is way bigger than just music history. It's a universal lesson in freedom, in control, and in mastery that any of us can apply to whatever it is we do.
And his principle really forces you to look in the mirror and ask a pretty tough question. In your work, in your craft, where are you giving away your power? What crucial part of your own vision have you handed off to somebody else? Maybe just because it's easier or because you told yourself you couldn't do it. Prince's entire life is a challenge to that way of thinking. The game plan is right there in his blueprint. Step 1, figure out what the absolute most critical parts of your work are, the things that really define its quality. Step 2, get obsessed with mastering them. Make it your mission to eliminate your dependence on other people for the things that matter most. And step 3, adopt that anti-delegation mandate. Just refuse to outsource the crucial stuff that you know deep down you could do better yourself. The moment you stop delegating the core of your work is the moment you take back control.
When you boil it all down, Prince's entire life, his entire empire, was built on one single profound truth. A truth that guided every note he played and every contract he fought. Dependence is the enemy of genius.
And what that shows us is that the Prince principle wasn't just about raw talent. It was the system that turned that talent into a blueprint for achieving total freedom, both creatively and commercially. It's the bridge that takes you from just being good at something to building an unshakable empire around it. And so the final lesson, it's as simple as it is powerful. An unbreakable rule for anyone who truly wants to be in control of their own destiny. Master every skill yourself, and no one can take your power.